Welcome back to Aarhus for the 49er European Championships. We're in semi-final day. We've just had racing for the women and they're completed. Now we're into the men's 49er. We've got 1 minute 38 seconds to go for the start. The conditions, it's light. It's very light. It's a sea breeze. Tricky conditions, Andy, and again, this is going to possibly favour some of the, the countries that really like light, fickle conditions. I think of the Italians, I think of the Spanish, the hotter countries. We've seen a brilliant performance by Grail this morning from Brazil in the women's class. Your expectation for this one?
Well, we got some very, very tight point situations here for making the top 8, much tighter than we saw with the women. So that there's a lot at stake here for quite a few of the boats of the 16 that we see coming up for the start here in a minute's time. And these guys will have had the benefit of seeing what was working for the women in the previous race, and the coaches will have fed some of that information back to them. And based on what we saw in previous racing, the far side of the course as we're looking at it, the pin end is where I would fancy to be starting. Nothing's guaranteed out here, but it looked like if you were going to bet your money on the left or the right, at the moment you'd be putting most of your money on the left.
The left looks good, certainly just a bit more pressure further out. You get a little bit of effect in this condition of the friction of the land, slowing the wind speed up. Coming up to 20 seconds, Andy, over to you.
Okay, so you can see a Danish boat on the far right-hand side by the orange flag of the pin mark. If they can hold position there, that would be a great place for them to come off the start. That's where I would want to be if you can come off the far end of the line as we're looking at it. But look at who's up this end of the line. It's the series leaders, Peter Burling and Blair Tuke, coming off this end as they start, and they're a little bit back on the boat next to them, which are their rivals for the lead. That's GBR 96, who got a good start there. Dylan Fletcher and Alan Sign got the best of the starts, and this is the discomfort of sailing a 49er in light winds, as the Kiwis are looking like they might do a tack. Or what's going on board there?
Looks like they've slowed up. It could be a general, maybe. Of course, like if there's a general recall, I'm sure I will get a call from the race office in a minute. But general recall, stakes are high, people have got to push it. And I'm a bit surprised to see the series leader and number 2 in the fleet, what we'd probably deem from what we learnt from the early racing with the women, at the wrong end of the line. You would think so, wouldn't you? We see that the Kiwis, these Kiwis in NZL number 2, tend to start at the starboard end of the line most of the time. That seems to be the favoured end in terms of where they like to position themselves on the line. But with today's conditions and the pattern that we've seen, I am very surprised. I just wonder if they lack a bit of confidence in their boat speed and they want to be able to tack away and sail in their own breeze, maybe not feeling that they can match the other boats in a straight line. They are one of the heavier teams in this setup, and to try and reduce weight, Pete Burling has actually taken his boots off today. He's sailing barefoot, as you Kiwis tend to. I think you're nuts. Well, it's certainly a bit of a trait from down under to sail in bare feet, but yeah, it's significant. You're right. I mean, you leave your boots ashore, that means a little less weight on board the boat. And a bit more feel, they say. Yeah, and you used to sail barefoot, didn't you? You run the risk of doing some good damage to your toes if you get it wrong. But we have just had a general recall. Seems to be the procedure, general recall, Principal Race Officer David Campbell-James. Are you expecting him, Andy, to go straight to a black flag, which means if a boat is over the line, they're no longer eligible, they're disqualified, basically. Based on what we just saw with the girls, that's exactly what David Campbell-James, the race director, did earlier. So I think we can fully expect him to do the same and put the black flag in. He's given them a fair go at starting in the conventional manner with a preparatory flag. That didn't work out, so straight into the black flag would be our prediction. So we'll just stay with this now. We go back into sequence. I think it's a fascinating battle. Who's on the edge here, Andy? We've got to look down to again, and James Peters. Now, surely that's the brother of, for what we saw a bit earlier.
I wonder.
James Peters on.
I wonder if these are these up to date? Do you think?
Showing a little different to what I have, but I guess we go with what we've got on the board here. I'm not sure if that one's right, actually, guys.
I think we have the Kiwis, Peter Burling and Blair Tuke in first place overall. We'll take those off the screen because they're confusing.
We'll just take those. That's confusing us a little bit. I think they might have been a previous scorecard. We're showing here Peter Burling first, Dylan Fletcher second, Eric Heil third.
From
I
Germany.
think they're our top three. But I'm really looking down at...
Let's look at the interesting stuff because it's all about making the top 8, isn't it? That's what's important at this stage. And the boat in 8th is a British boat, former world champions Stevie Morrison and Ben Rhodes on 76 points. So currently 76 points is what gets you through. Now let's count back up. We've got, in 7th, we've got a boat on 76 points. In 6th, we've got a boat on 76 points. In 5th, we've got a boat on 74 points. So we've got 4 boats there, all very close together, just 2 points. Now, if we go to just below 8th place, in 9th, we've got James Peters and Ed Fitzgerald on 77 points. And so they are only a point away. And we've got 2 other boats just a couple of points away from 8th place. So I would say, looking at this, there are at least 7 or 8 boats that will either go that are right on the cusp. They're right on the margin of staying in or going out.
I completely agree, Andy. I mean, I look right up to 5th at 74 points and down to what?
At least 11th.
11th. So you could actually go from 5th in the 2 races we're going to have and miss out. This is very, very tight on points, and I think above 5th they're almost safe.
There's a weird bit of symmetry here with the girls as well. So just now we were talking about Frances Peters, who was just on the cusp of going through. She didn't manage it. She finished 9th. She doesn't go through to the finals of the 49er FX. Here, her younger brother, James Peters, sits in 9th place. So it would be nice if one of the Peters could go through today.
Completely agree. Just to give you a bit of an update, although we've got the clock running there at 1:50 to go, in fact, I have heard on the race channel that I'm privy enough to listen into that there has, in fact, been a postponement. There's a bit of a wind shift. That's why you're seeing there that Burling and Tuke are sitting on the side of the chase boat. In fact, we are in postponement. So
okay,
just ignore the clock, and perhaps we'll get the boys to take the clock down. We will just keep chattering away because I'm sure the race manager, David Campbell-James, will be keen to get underway. It's hard, and as the afternoon draws on, and it just gets harder for him, doesn't it? Because this very light, very, very light sea breeze starts to taper off again. We've already heard him say in the previous racing with the women, we had 7 or 8 knots. He's telling me now he's only got 5 and 6. So already the wind is decreasing. There has been a slight right-hand shift. If racing goes, same course, 2 laps. So it's a short course. Target time, 20 minutes.
Well, he seems very good at getting the 20 minutes that he's looking for. That's the sign of an experienced race officer that can set a course and knows these boats so well that he can set the course so that they go round pretty much to the minute of 20 minutes. That's very impressive that he manages to do that. Having said that, the wind is dropping, and so he might have to close the course up even more for this 4-leg race. And it's a shame that they didn't manage to get away on that start just now, because the opportunities are reducing as we speak, as the thermal breeze looks like it's beginning to die away.
Yes, it certainly does. We're concentrating on the gold fleet. The other fleets are actually as well, silver and bronze. You can see them in the background as they head out. But Andy, I just think if we don't get a wriggle on here, we could just... Light isn't an issue. It's wind and stability of the wind that seems to... could come into play as the afternoon or the early evening closes in on us.
So we come back to that topic that we talked about earlier about getting yourself up for the moment and getting the adrenaline running, and then you get into a race and then suddenly you find that you're in a postponement, and do you keep that adrenaline pumping through the system, or is that just going to wear you out? So how do you get yourself up? How do you bring yourself back down again? It's one of those challenging days.
Well, and in some ways you think the easy days are the days you come down to the dock, 12 o'clock start, you start on time, you race around the track because psychologically you're there. It's days like today where these guys have been sitting around all day in there, probably eating a bit, probably feeling a bit tired. All of a sudden they're called out on the water. It's the people that can switch on. And in some ways, I don't mean easy points in a regatta, but in some ways, in psychologically, when you're in this space, there are points to be gained.
Yes,
and vice versa. You can drop hard-earned points from earlier in the regatta. So it's all about focus, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and being able to switch yourself back into that zone, that competitive zone that some people seem to be able to flick like a switch. And
really, so much of that responsibility, I think, for the modern athlete is with the coach. You know, that the coach has to have the skills to say the right things, that the sailors, when they go on the water, are ready to go. And then the distractions, because it is a distraction, isn't it? That you come ashore, they've been sent off the water, they start talking to the opposition again. It's a sport of emotions sometimes, isn't it, and concentration. So they are the little side plays that really are so powerful in sailing. It's not like going and playing a 40-minute football game. By the way, congratulations. The British Lions beat the Wallabies earlier today. And
comprehensively.
I've forgotten the score. I think it was 42-16 to the British and Irish Lions, as you call them, but a little bit of a football update.
And we're waiting to hear what happens with the America's Cup back in the sailing world. And
yes, well, it's in a little bit of turmoil. And Andy, I see overnight that the Italians have come out and said, well, maybe with the controversy, we may not race in the first race against Emirates Team New Zealand tomorrow. So that's all by play. But I'm now hearing on race radio that we're looking at 40 seconds to the warning signal. So we've still got a little bit of time to fill. Yes, but the America's Cup is another debate, isn't it? And I just hope it goes off this year. I just hope it's not embroiled in controversy and jury decisions and court battles. The sport doesn't need it.
That's been where it's at over the last month or so. Let's hope we actually get to see some hard racing and some hard sailing. One of the nice things that 49er sailors will appreciate is just how well 49er skippers have adapted to that world, and they've been one of the hot recruiting grounds for the America's Cup. Ex-world champions and Olympic medalists like Chris Draper and Nathan Outridge. Nathan Outridge, the skipper or the helmsman of the Artemis boat, and for Luna Rossa, it's Chris Draper.
Peter Burling that's here. He's sort of been flirting with Team Korea.
Well, in fact,
and they're 45, and Emirates Team New Zealand. I think he's being groomed to really be, if the game carries on for the Kiwis. Looks like Burling, who's currently leading here, he could be a player in the professional side in the America's Cup in years to come. But that's all. I'm sure Peter Burling has got more on his mind at the moment as he's sitting out here waiting to go racing with his 49er campaign. He's leading the Europeans. Had quite a big break, actually, from when he won his silver medal in London 2012. Burling hasn't really been sailing the 49er.
No, it's nearly a year ago now.
He won the Australian Moth Championships. He's been doing AC 45 racing. And I wonder what impact that's... Do you think it freshens them up for this type of racing again, or is it a big compromise? What are your thoughts on sailing different varieties of boat?
I think based on what we've seen today, this week rather, it hasn't done them any harm at all. Their boat handling seems crisper than anybody else's here, which I find staggering considering how little they've sailed the boat together over the last year, because it is a boat that demands an awful lot of understanding and telepathy between the helm and the crew. They've got to work in synchronization in ways that other boats don't demand. So I don't see that it's done them any harm at all, and I think it would have done them more harm if they'd have kept on sailing the 49er hard all the way through from Weymouth in 2012 to Rio in 2016. I think if you didn't take a break at some point in those 4 or 5 years, then you would be in danger of suffering burnout.
Certainly managing your enthusiasm and managing your learning in terms of the sport. Blair Tuke's been doing ocean racing. Just recently down in the southern hemisphere, he did a race from Auckland to Fiji on a basically a TP 52 type boat. So maybe Blair Tuke, as we look at him there in shot, he has, wouldn't surprise me to see him doing something like in the Volvo, or again with Team New Zealand. So, wow, what a future they've got ahead of them. It's just brilliant. I love it.
Well, to have done so much at such a young age, to have got 2 silvers and 2 world championships, a silver in the Olympic Games, and still to be in their very early 20s, that's a really impressive CV they've racked up already.
Stars of the future. Well, they're stars already.
So look at the colour of that flag on the screen there. We saw it just then. There's the drone. There's that high-tech drone hovering around and capturing images of the sailing. And there is the drone image. And we hope we can bring you more drone images during this race, the first 49er men's race of the day.
It's one of those absolutely high-tech solutions that I think we're just going to, it's tailor-made for our sport. The drone, the images that come from it, it's a very sharp image. And we can get right on the start line without the effect like a helicopter that can only take that same shot. Just at low level, at low altitude, just throws so much turbulence back onto the boat. We can see the drone there just to windward of the fleet, and really, other than a little bit of noise, it's I'd love to have a play with it. I don't think it would last very long if I had a play with it, though. I think she'd...
And we'd love to be seeing more of that drone shot for this start. That's great. If we could just keep that shot there for the next minute, because this is going to be the shot that gives us an indication of who's getting close to the line. This is a start line they can't afford to get too close to until start gun time, because it is a black flag start. We've been on postponement, but remember there was a recall earlier, so you cannot afford to be over on this start, and we're going to see a slightly more conservative approach to the line this time round. And where are the Kiwis?
I don't see them this time. I'm just exactly, and the Brits. There's, as we look through the field,
we don't see the same Kiwis. We see a Kiwi boat, which is the younger guys in NZL 66. That's
Marcus Hansen.
Yeah, and Josh Perebski, so that they're going for this end. And right up at this end, we see Dave Evans and Edward Paris. They're 6 overall at the moment, and you can see Dave Evans sculling the tiller there, trying to stop the boat from going head to wind. And 3 seconds to go. Here they go. Is anyone going to be over? Because they can't afford to be. And now it's all about maximum acceleration. Good start in particular for the French boat. France 8 there. Julian Dortoli and Noé Delpech. Good start for them, and someone very poked out in the middle.
Looked like Jordi Lima from Portugal got a bit spat out the back.
And looks like there's a penalty turn there for GBR 98. Did their leeward tiller extension strike the boat next to them? Maybe it was the French boat. And let's just go to 3D graphics and just get a sense of how things are going from the overhead shot. So we saw the French. They got a good start this end of the line. They're in one of the leading contenders at this stage. But on the far side, it's the boat that got the pin end start. It's Jonas Warrer, the Olympic champion in 2008. And so often we see the boat that wins the pin gets the early advantage, and that's exactly the reward that the Danes are reaping on the far side of the course. And remember that Warrer, he's in 5th place. Sounds like it's a long way up above 8th, but it's not on points. He's one of a number of boats that we've identified, possibly about 8 or 9 boats that are on the cusp of going in or staying in or going out of the competition. But first place looking good for Jonas Warrer, the Olympic champion from 2008, sailing with Peter Lang. In the middle, German boat, Eric Heil and Thomas Plössl doing very well. And here we see the guys that were leading the regatta up until yesterday. That's Dylan Fletcher and Alan Syne sailing on port tack. And they are just a point behind the Kiwi Series leaders, who we haven't seen yet, but I think are on the left-hand side of the course. And there's a lovely shot from the helicopter drone of Dylan Fletcher and Alan Syne doing a nice roll tack. You don't often roll tack the 49er, but in these conditions you do. And Dylan Fletcher taking the main sheet through the tack and handing it back to Alan Syne once they're up and running. high trapezing because it's light winds.
Well, Dylan Fletcher, he won here this year. I'm not sure what the conditions were early in the well, it's springtime, doesn't it, when you have it in the northern hemisphere.
I think they had some breeze for here this year. You can have, it's either on or off in here. It's either light winds or really strong winds. But they're on the what I consider to be the more dangerous right-hand side. I think the right-hand side is the riskier side of this course to be. And let's just go back to the 3D graphics and get a sense of how things are progressing. It looks like Jonas Warrer is managing to cling onto his lead, but there are quite a few boats all in very close contention on the left-hand side. Looks like the left is the place to be.
So there's the cavalcade going to the left-hand side, and of course at with it being such a short windward beat, at some time you've got to try and get out of the left, find a lane, because it's quite a clustered group, to get back across. But certainly Warrer is bow forward. We've got Heil in there. I see Burling's tacked. Phillips.
Burling's some way back in that group, though, so he might be in a good place on the race course, but it suggests that he either didn't get a great start or doesn't have great boat speed.
He certainly looked a little bit covered up as we come there. Andy, I'm just trying to identify.
Dave Evans, Ed Paris, 6th overall at the moment. We saw them do that penalty turn off the start line, so they will be playing catch up, and they're also going out to the right-hand side of the course. But Dylan Fletcher holding his own, another British boat holding his own on the right-hand side of the course. So he's managing to make the right work for him at the moment, but he's still very separated from most of the fleet. So it's quite a risky move that he's making over there. But
just looking at the wind on the water, I thought in the FX race it looked decidedly quiet on the right-hand side. I don't think it looks as quiet now. I think it looks more uniform from right to left later in the afternoon. I don't think it's quite as disadvantaged as what it was. We'll just look as the boats come together. You'll probably pick it up off 3D there, as we can see the group now coming across from the right and from the left, I'm sorry, and that group are required to keep clear. They are the port tackers.
And we do see a much more even spread of the leaderboard across the whole breadth of the course. So what you were saying, Peter, looks like it is correct according to the 3D graphics, that left and right don't matter as much, so much as they did when the women were racing earlier. So we've got first place now for the Austrians, which is that would be a useful score for them. They got first and third in their previous two races yesterday, but they're still in 10th place overall. Nico Della Cartha, they still have some work to do. They've got to make up some points to get into the top 8, but currently vying for first place position in this race, that would be enough for them.
So Andy, just coming up now to just over halfway, and in fact the right hand side looks a little bit better than the left hand, and that's the first time I've seen that in terms of the condition, wind on the water.
Well, certainly the French look like they're going along very nicely there. They've got both of them on the wing trapezing. That's Julian Dortoli and Noe Delpech, who are already doing enough to go through in 4th place overall, but looking pretty solid on that side of the course, as you say.
Yes, it did. It's sort of, there's been a little bit of a subtle change to the conditions. Right in the far distance, one of the other fleets, of course, we have got silver and bronze also racing. We're covering the gold fleet to 16 in the race, and we'll cut that back to 8 for the finals tomorrow.
As they come to the top of the course, we're trying to identify this boat here. Who might that be going through attack? That's a Portuguese boat. That's George Lima and Jose Costa. They are another boat that they're probably the last of the group in 11th place that has a serious shot at going through into the final 8. So they need a good score here. But if we just go to the overhead 3D graphics, let's get a sense of how things are developing, and we'll see that still there's no clear pattern about left or right here. Peter, you said that the right was a little bit more favoured, and it looks like you're correct, because now the new leader on the right-hand side is Stevie Morrison and Ben Rhodes from Great Britain, former world champions. But the leaderboard is changing all the time, and now on the far left, we see it's the Austrians who take up the lead. So there's very little in it.
I think across the track, it's just if one side gets a little bit more pressure, you know, half a knot more pressure just makes such a difference to the performance of these boats. That's on board with Burling and Tuke, who are the current regatta winners. And you can see there, as you've pointed out, how big Burling's a big boy for sailing 49er.
And too big for these conditions. You want to be light for these conditions, and you need to chop his legs off, really. He's tall enough already. But there he is. I mean, he's just so smooth around the boat for a big guy, and there he is trapezing without his boots on. I think he's a brave boy. He's not far away from a stubbed toe, as far as I can see.
Does happen. As well, it looks like they're around the mark, so they must be reasonably well up the pack. So on board, we saw just see how quickly they hoist.
Although Peter Burling is the faster hoister, they had the hoist competition the other day, and Blair was actually slower than.
Well, he's a hell of a lot bigger than him.
Well, that's true, but it was old man Ed Smythe, their coach, a former 49er world champion from about 13 years ago, out hoisted both of them. So maybe the coach should be getting on board and doing the hoisting.
Excellent to hear. Good man, Ed Smythe. Been round, good pro sailor.
So
yeah.
Let's try and work out what's been going on this first rounding. If we can go to, have we got good graphics at the moment? Yes, there we are. So it looks like Dylan Fletcher has taken the lead. We got so many lead changes in this race so far.
Now that's interesting, because we were just talking about Fletcher. He went upwind, what we thought was the unfavoured side, so he saw something very early on that was quite nice to lead around the mark. So it was a good effort by the second overall so far, Dylan Fletcher. We spoke to him earlier. He went into this today with I'm going to move up the field. He's only got to move up one to get into the lead. He really saw this as a mover's day, didn't he? As opposed to probably Burling, who saw it as a consolation or a consolidation day.
Of sort of hang in there.
Hanging in there, because tomorrow double points in the finals.
But we've been a little bit rude about Burling's abilities in light winds, and here he is, 4th or 5th place. He's very much in the mix. So for a big guy, he's making the 49er go very well in light winds, and so he seems like he might be more of an all-round package than even he gives himself credit for.
Julian Dortoli there, he's in there. He's currently in 4th position. So, and Kostov just behind in 3rd, Burling 4th.
The Croatians, Pavel Kostov and Peter Kupac, they are in 13th overall. I think even with a good result here, they're going to struggle to break in to the top 8.
Well, they could, you know, they've still got 3 races. Up to 3 races, but they're sort of a long way behind, aren't they, on 105 points. The cutoff is way down there at 76.
And how many races will they actually be able to get in today? So,
well,
I mean, it's sort of hanging in there at the moment, isn't it?
Although, Andy, I just take the liberty again, and I know we should be talking to pitchers. Look out the window. It is looking very soft again on this right-hand side.
And it looks...
Here we go. He
doesn't want the camera boat too near him.
So is that Fletcher?
That's James Peters and
James
Ed Fitzgerald
Peters
wearing the purple jerseys from yesterday from being fastest downwind boat. They're not looking like fastest downwind boat there today. It's looking very, very light. Not the sleigh ride planing conditions that we saw yesterday. Very different style of sailing, requiring different types of skill. Generally, I'll just put my British hat on here. This is a good race for the Brits. We're seeing many different Brits up there vying for the lead, and we've seen James Peters briefly in the lead in this race, but currently it's another Brit team, Dylan Fletcher and Alan Syne, who are continuing to lead the race.
Well, they've got a comprehensive lead. If we look out to the white spinnaker, white Jenica,
they've really stretched away.
And then there's that group, the black spinnaker, the leading black spinnaker. I'm figuring could be the regatta leader at the moment, Burling.
Well, if you factor in where they actually are in this race, I would say that maybe Fletcher and Sign have moved back into the lead. But
yes, correct.
But Burling and Tuke still having a very good race. They're still very much in the front pack.
So Fletcher, and then we've got that group of 2, 3, 4, 5. There's Heil to Winwood, Kozlov. Burling's the lured one, which we can't quite. Number 3, who that? Dortoli. Great field. But how quickly? Look at Dylan Fletcher.
Yes, and if we could go back, we could just see him going round the mark. He's just rounding the lured mark and taking the right-hand gate mark, which will take him back towards the shore. And that was the side that he picked up the first beat, which served him very well. So there he goes, and look at all that daylight behind him. Massive gain down that last run.
So he had a very strong downwind as he tacks, and I think tacking there pretty smart, because the picture looks different to the first upwind. That's Mark 2 that he's just gone round. That's Dylan Fletcher, Alan Sign.
And what a turn of speed they put on in the last 2 or 3 minutes. That's the measure of their gain there. They're going past the next boat now, who is still another 20 seconds away from getting to the bottom mark. So I would say they've got a lead of perhaps a minute on the rest of the fleet.
So then we have the 3 coming in together.
That's
who's in there first? It's
2 black kites. I think it's the Croatians and the Kiwis that are pretty much going to go around at the same time. Looks like the Kiwis might get round ahead. And then just behind them, it's going to be the French just dropping their blue Jenica. I think it's the Croatians coming out towards us. And there we are on board with the Kiwis. Good rounding and a good run for them in either 2nd or 3rd place.
It's pretty close. The issue for the boats that are coming to the nearest marker is actually having to sail back through the fleet, Andy.
Yes, and that's one of the things that determines which mark you choose, is what's going to give you the least traffic, what's going to give you the clearest air as you make that exit out of this congested mark area. We're seeing how congested it is at this stage of the fleet. Looks like the younger Kiwis going around the mark there. And trying to identify that boat. That was a Danish boat just going round.
So but we're on leg 3. It's 49er, the Gold Fleet.
There's the top 5 confirmed in this race so far. Dylan Fletcher far out in the lead and protecting his lead quite sensibly, going out to the left, putting in a little hitch to the right just to stay above his nearest opposition. His nearest opposition now being the guy or the guys that are threatening for the overall lead. It's really between the British and the Kiwis for the overall lead in the series. And Burling sailing a very good race at the moment.
So the 2 boats in shot there. We've got Fletcher on the right, Burling on the left, and we're back to that pattern again that was familiar in the FX racing of really a little bit more wind on the outside. We've just had a couple of little windows, if you're brave, on the right, but generally the left has been probably a bit more favoured, hasn't it?
Yes.
Both upwind and downwind.
Where we are from our commentary position, it is a lot softer, and there's a bunch of boats sailing out of the right-hand side of the course, just on the margins of where it looks like it's getting lighter. And we just see coming into picture the German boat on the left-hand side of the picture. They're right on the edge of where the breeze is dying out. So they're sailing up the edge of the lighter breeze without actually going into it. And that is, I think that's Eric Heil, that German boat, being crossed on the right-hand side by the French boat Julian Dortoli and Noé Delpech. So the French looking quite strong on this side, but in the far distance, top of picture, Dylan Fletcher and Alan Sign still a long way in the lead, but you would think they would want to start coming back over this way just to protect on the people coming to the right-hand side of the course, unless they still think that the left is the place to be.
They've really minimised their tacks, haven't they? And in fact, I think the top players are really, because tacking is so expensive, but certainly Dylan Fletcher just one tack at the bottom mark, and he's really looks like he's going to go all the way out to the port hand lay line before setting himself up for that top mark. And it just looks like maybe Burling has got a similar tactic.
And if we could just go to the overhead 3D graphics, just get a sense of how things are going across the race course. Let's see how Dylan Fletcher's lead is going. It's still pretty handy on Pete Burling, also on the left-hand side. So Fletcher's biggest threat is still from the left-hand side, and that's where he is. But there are opportunities if the breeze were to change. There's a lot of leverage there for the French and the Germans on the right-hand side, so it wouldn't take much of a change in breeze in either direction or strength for the French and the Germans to start threatening Fletcher. But Fletcher really staking his claim on the left-hand side, but now he's tacked, and as he does tack across, he looks like he's got the boats on the right well squared away. So Fletcher was right to put his chips on the left-hand corner. And sometimes, Peter, in this style of racing and these light winds, you have to go with your hunch rather than spend too much time worrying about where the opposition are.
Yes, I completely agree, and certainly we're seeing Burling hanging it out. Kostov, to me, looks to be quite nicely positioned on Burling's hip, and it would only take a little bit of pressure, a little bit of wind shift, and Kostov would be challenging for second. Fletcher, for me, in the lead, sailing beautifully. He's got such a big bit of leverage there with only a short time to go to the top mark. I have a bit of a look. He's around 2 or 3 minutes from the top mark. I think our race leader, Dylan Fletcher, the race is on, though, for second, third, fourth, with the group behind. And just looking at Dylan Fletcher going across the middle of the screen there, does look like a pretty handy lead that he has. It's a massive lead. The wind seems to have just quite low settled down a wee bit. It got a bit fickle on the last downwind of their first race, but it just looks to have settled down a wee bit more. I'm a wee bit optimistic that we might actually get a third race off. They will go around the top mark and then run down to finish, just 2 laps, 20-minute races. I like the short races, actually. I think it's great. You know, quick fire, brilliant. Well, they need to be short today just to pack them in. And if anyone can get the races in today on these tricky conditions, it would be David Campbell-James and his team. So there's the race leader tacking for the top mark. For the last time, he'll come round and he will hoist his Jenica, head off down to the bottom mark. He's going to win this one easily. Nice bit of windward heel just to help the boat bear away as Alan Syne runs in to hoist the Jenica, and look how fast that is. Bit of an hourglass, but it comes out easily, so nice hoist for the Brits. And this is the final leg down to the finish. I'll be just fascinated when we pan back as we follow there Dylan Fletcher, Alan Syne going down. Here come the group back together, and that's looks like we might have possibly a bit of a change up the front. Let's go to 3D graphics and just see where Fletcher is and where the rest of the fleet are. So looks like they've extended even further in the lead. And on the left-hand side, Pete Burling, nominally in 4th place, but yeah, it looks like Kostov has done well on Burling, and maybe Burling has overstood the ley line, which if he has, that would be although the boats are gauging, they're tacking through more than 90 degrees, I guess. You can see the tracking line as we come. Perhaps I think if you're tacking, it's set up so you're tacking through 90 degrees. But if you're actually tacking through a greater angle than that, of course, you can see now Burling coming down onto that imaginary ley line. But look at the French coming back from the middle of the track. Nice little bit of pressure. Looks like the French are going to claim second round the mark. And there it's confirmed they do, with the Croatians just behind. So a bit of a loss for the Kiwis, who just rounded in second at the bottom of this leg. But they're still very much in contention. And second, third, fourth and fifth are very much up for grabs. I can't see how anybody is going to catch the British in first place, though. No, they're gone. They're in another division, but it is certainly all on behind them. Bearing in mind
that the Kiwis, just out of picture, are a little bit heavier than the other teams, or believed to be so, because people sometimes are a little bit secretive about their actual crew weights.
Swings and roundabouts, so isn't it? You know, if you want to sail a little bit heavier, you get a nice bonus when the breeze is on. You pay a bit of a penalty in the light. If you're a light crew, you have the advantage in the light airs, but you pay a penalty in a breeze. So, you know, it's the way the game is played, isn't it? And in terms of over the fleet, you say, well, I hear the talk a little bit, what is the target weight? And hearing yesterday, 155 kilos is about the target weight for a 49er. So if you're above that weight, you're strong in a breeze. If you're below that weight, you're going to have, you know, a weight advantage, a horsepower advantage, which you don't need in the light. So it's really a game of optimising your crew weight for the conditions at specific regattas.
Just going to see if I can bring up the live leaderboard, if that's possible. So if I can bring up live leaderboard, if I can get the top 10, that would be even better. And there we see Fletcher in the lead, and then we see that much closer gaggle of boats, second, third, fourth and fifth, between 4 different nations there and there. Okay, great. So we've got 500 meters to the finish for the leaders, Dylan Fletcher. So and they've got 200 meters back to the next boat. So it's hard to see how anybody is going to catch the boat in picture now, which is the white spinnakered British boat.
But look how the leaderboard, you know, in terms of the animation, the 3D animation is moving the places around in terms of their performance with that front group. But there's no doubt about our race leader, Dylan Fletcher.
There we are on board with the Kiwis in 4th place, still battling away for anything between 2nd and 5th place. And very tricky conditions to get the best out of the boat in these kind of winds. You want to be concentrating full time on the boat speed, but you've got other things to think about. You've got to look at the other boats, you've got to look at the wind. So you've got a lot to think about. And there they go through a jibe. Blair Tuke pulling the black kite through to the new side and setting the Jenica on the new jibe. Dylan Fletcher just little more than 100 meters away from the finish now. He's a lot closer to the finish than he is back to the boats behind him, so there's no way he's going to be caught now. Possibly his last jibe of the race. Not their best jibe, but he's got the boat going again. Very hard to flick the battens through in these lighter conditions, and also to get the kite set cleanly.
Starting to get very light though. There's patches on the water where it starts to look a bit glassy, and Fletcher has only got not too far to go, about 100 meters down to the finish. And beautifully, you know, he's managed this race so well in terms of his start, his topmart approach, downwind. Looks to me as though a relatively small helmsman, Andy, and downwind, they seem to be able to trapeze with ease in terms of, you know, having a nice optimum light air, moderate air weight, crew weight.
Here they go. This must be their last jibe into the finish. They're just a few meters away, just getting the kite set, releasing it to maximum power. And once they go between those orange flags, then the race win will be confirmed. And that's very likely to move them back into first overall. And when we get to the end of this race, we will have another look at how the standings are for those top 8 places to go through to the final tomorrow. Bearing in mind that we might still get more racing today, but if we didn't, then whatever happens at the end of this race would determine who those top 8 would be.
So, you know, we're not sure how many more races we're going to get, but maybe we should be just talking about who's on the cut-off, and it's really Jonas Warrer, David Evans from GBR, Marcus Hansen, Stevie Morrison, James Peters, Nico Delacarth, Geordie Lima. They're all in the Alan Norregard. They're on the edge, aren't they? Depending on race results.
Yes, they are. Here we see Peter Burling vying with Eric Heil for position. It looks like the French are going to claim second place in this race. but it's close between the Kiwis and Eric Heil behind them. So who's going to get second? Is it going to be the French or is it going to be the Croatians?
But it does look like the wind for this, the group that are coming in, including Burling, is starting to shut down at the bottom. They're just approaching the bottom mark gate. Then they've got about another 100 metres to go. But I think Burling has lost a couple here at the bottom. You can see there he's rolling into a roll jibe.
And how much effort he put into that as well. He jumps all the way out on the wire to put some roll and put some kinetics through the boat before he goes through the jibe.
We can see there's a absolute log jam of boats. So next coming through, the black spinnaker will be next.
I think that's the Croatians possibly.
Croatian, and then the blue of... I'm just losing track of who's who here.
I think it's Croatians, then the French. I'm not too sure if I've got those. Yes, it is Croatians.
And here they come now. Who's in that windward position? Is that it's going to be Burling? Oh, as he gives the boat a big push. Down comes the bow. Over they go. Photo finish. Hard to call. I think it just might have been the Kiwis over Heil, the German, but we'll get that confirmed once the points are tallied. But there's a bit of kinetics going on there, Andy.
Yes, I would say marginal. On the margins of legality, I would wonder.
And through now come the rest of the field. Gee, it just comes down to inches, doesn't it? Number 6 going over the line, that'll be Marcus Hansen. So he's had a good...
These are
keeper.
Absolutely critical points, and there's not much between these boats, and it's so close. No one's going to know who's through and who's not through until all the boats are through this finish line. It's so close.
So there's we've got Fletcher, Kostov, Dortoli, Burling, Heil make up the top 5.
And then there's a bit of a gap back to the Italian boat coming down from the right-hand side of the screen.
Well, we're just going to have to wait for everyone to come through before we can do an update of the points. It just gets so tense because here we are, we've had one race. There's a question mark about how many races our race officer will get off this evening. And we could actually be looking at a cut as we speak here now. But if the guns go again, if we get into another warning, you almost get a second life if you're in the bottom half of the field, don't you?
That's right, and there will certainly be some teams hoping for that second life. This isn't confirmed because we're still seeing the last few boats finish, but we do see a little bit of a change. It looks like Nico Delacarth, the Austrian boat, has moved up, but not quite enough, so they're in 9th place now. James Peters and Ed Fitzgerald were in 9th place. They've dropped a place to 10th overall, and they were vying for the lead at one point in that race, but they finished 15th in that race. So they will be hoping that they get another chance.
Well, we're just going to go back out onto the water, and we'll get Ben. I think Ben's going to talk to our race winners, Dylan Fletcher.
Here we are with Dylan Fletcher and Alan Syne of the British sailing team, winners of the last race. What was the key to the victory?
I think just a bit of shift and pressure, eyes up the course, because we knew it was sea breeze was shifting around a bit before the start, so we were kind of just heads out the boat and see what happened, really.
Yeah, what happened to you guys on that start line?
Well, we had a start in the middle, just above the Germans, Eric, and we just felt that the breezes left off the start, so we just flicked over onto port and kind of tried to work at the beat on the shifts. I mean, we felt that there was a lot of people out left that were quite concerned, but we were confident that it was a shift day, and we turned out to be to get it right, even with the Brits tacking on us a couple of times.
And from there you just extended away, easy stuff?
Yeah, I guess in that stuff it's kind of the rich get richer, you just get cleaner breeze, and you just extend all the time. So but even then, downwind, you still got to kind of stay in the pressure and not take the big picture out of your mind, kind of thing. So
we've got maybe 1 or 2 more races left before the Gold Fleet final. What are you looking to do in the next couple races?
I think just keep simple, keep sailing how we have been. we know what's important, so just keep at it. No, not trying to win anything, not trying to do anything daft, and just simple sailing and hopefully some cracking results.
Okay, well, good luck the rest of the way through, and let's go back to the studio.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be able to go out and interview the winners. Interesting comment, eh? He wanted left, couldn't get it, so he just really did as much as he can with the right hand in middle, and it was he worked the shifts. Got round the top mark, got into a new breeze line, gone. I mean, again, you don't always get what you plan to get, but you do the best you can with what you got, and in that case, he managed that beautifully.
They were the boys that went out with a positive attitude today as well. They were looking forward to this. They were looking forward to putting good points on the board. You want to put as few points on the board as you can, and in this game, you can't get better than 1 point. And what a 1 point it was. They just ran away with that race, and I think they've got very good boat speed in these conditions. They reckon they're about 10 kilos lighter overall than the Kiwis, for example.
So that's significant. That's a lot, isn't it, in
I think
terms
so.
of these boats?
Competitive sailors are obsessive about weight. They want as much of it as they can get in strong winds and as little of it as they can get rid of in light winds. And in fact, the 18-foot skiff, the precursor to the 49er, the sort of the granddaddy of all skiffs in the good old days or the bad old days, depending on what you believe. They used to, when they got to the top mark for the final run to the finish, they'd throw some of the boys out off the side of the boat, throw them to the sharks in Sydney Harbour, because a lighter boat is a faster boat, and who cares about the guys?
They two-legged sharks or one-fin sharks? It is Australia,
Yeah, well, they have both in Australia, but and there's plenty of both kinds on Sydney Harbour.
Well, of course, I'm sure you've done it, Andy. You can go on Sydney Harbour, have a great afternoon's entertainment, and if you like betting, you can bet on 80-footer skiff racing. I mean, have you ever done it? I haven't, but you hear of people that have a great afternoon out on the water, a few VBs, and and there's a bookie on board, so it's all properly organised.
It is, and it's a tradition that goes back more than 100 years, and that's the origins of the racing that we're watching today, believe it or not. That's where it all came from.
Well, I'm just getting a call on my race radio, so we are racing. We're going to go for another start in about 6 minutes. David is telling me he's got 4 or 5 knots, so we are at the bottom end now, aren't we? But it does look like we're going to have racing about another 6 minutes away, and the wind is getting lighter and lighter. At what point do you think you say this is fair racing or this is turning into a lottery? I don't think we're there yet, but at some point, and that's one of the skills, isn't it, of the race management team, where they say, right, it's light but fair, but we're stepping over the line now, and it's turning into a lottery.
Can you imagine what the reaction of some of the boys in the 505 fleet from last week at Kielerwacker would be if they had to sail in this? I mean, I don't think they'd be putting up with this. Yes. They'd be voting with their rudders and steering the boat home back to the harbour. So this is pretty unusual if you were to measure by the standards of, say, 20 or 30 years ago. I don't think you'd try and race in these conditions. But the sailors have learnt to cope with whatever is thrown at them. And the 49ers are probably more tolerant of marginal sailing conditions than pretty much any other group of sailors. It's sort of what you sign up to when you sign up to skiff sailing. Is part of the appeal of skiff sailing is sailing close to the shore, spectator friendly, lots of short, sharp races. And if you get enough races in the series, I don't think it matters so much if some of the conditions are marginal, because the good guys always find a way of getting through, even in the strangest and the weirdest of sailing conditions.
It's one of the great measures, isn't it, of sailing, that the good guy, it's so well said, the good guys always come through.
And we saw that with Peter Burling and Blair Tuke. They're not going to be the fastest because they are probably too heavy for the boat compared with some of their rivals, but they still slotted in whatever it was. It was a 4th place in that race, so there's nothing wrong with a 4th place.
We're going to take a little ad break, and then don't go away. We're going to be back with racing, as they just said. We're looking at a start in about 5 minutes. So we'll take a quick little break for a drink, and then we'll be right back with you.
During the next race,